Well, yeah, but see, here's my point. The movie can be as beautiful and as amazing and as fantastic looking as possible, but ultimately, it's usually the dialogue, it's usually the quotes and things of that nature that make the movie. I'm sorry. Movies have to have good plots, have to have good storylines, but more importantly, have to have good dialogue.
Wow.
What's up, everybody? So, my name is Michael Stephenson. Welcome to my channel. This is my art and entertainment industry series in which I talk mainly about Hollywood, talk about how film, television, what have you, is so different and why exactly we are feeling that it is different. So, tonight I want to talk to you. Oh, and sorry, but my whole spiel is that I am trying to do these videos in a particular order because in some of the earlier videos, I'm trying to build up a sort of dialogue or sort of lingo or go over sort of basic concepts that I want to be covering on the channel. So please go back and look at some of my earlier videos. Then you will know exactly what it is that I'm talking about because I'm building up a particular language. So if you don't know what something like the Lost effect or the Avatar era means, please go back and watch those videos. So tonight, I want to talk to you guys about something that is very, very much so missing in a lot of our modern films, and that is notable quotables. So I feel like you guys and gals probably know exactly what it is that I'm talking about when I say notable quotables. In my opinion, I don't think that we have very many movies anymore in which, or frankly, very many TV shows even anymore in which there are really good quotable lines from those movies. We are currently in what I call the Avatar era, and let's start there. Avatar, probably one of the reasons why it wasn't a very memorable movie, why it wasn't memed a lot, why people just weren't talking about it, why people dressing up as the characters from the movies, why a lot of people said that it was unimpactful as a movie, it didn't make any sort of impression in the zeitgeist, in the overall pop culture, is because there were no quotable lines from the movie. Can you remember a single line from the original Avatar? And don't go and watch Avatar now and then come back and say, yeah, I remember this line. Number one, even if you do remember a line, its chances are high that probably nobody else remembers the line. I think that this has become a recurring theme throughout a lot of films these days where the dialogue is it's just not there, the lines are just not there. This is one of the problems that I had with the first Dune movie, is that there were some people online who were praising this as just such a great movie, such an amazing movie, and yet it wasn't memorable. Not only was it not memorable, but it was slow, and worst of all, it had nothing in there was no dialogue in there that was extremely quotable. Even some of the lines that were sort of taken from the book in and of itself has some pretty good lines, but here, there was almost nothing to clam onto. So first off, let me say this: this is a refilming. I had to refilm a few of the videos that I did earlier last year in 2023. So this is actually a refilm of another video in which I was talking about quotes, movie quotes as well, and I had to refilm it not only because I spent like the first half hour talking about the strike, because the strikes had just went into effect and how that was going to affect writing. It was the writer strike that had just gone into effect. The actor strike had not yet come. But also because that one was too long, but I did try to break things down in a few different sort of phases. So first off, let me try to break down the thing that I did before in those previous videos. And that was that I tried to differentiate between what good dialogue is and what a good quote is, because I want to say that they are different. As a writer, I believe that they are different. So first, a good quote we all know: "Yippee ki yay, mother," "Say hello to my little friend," "Hasta la vista, baby." Those types of things are quotes. They are easy to remember oftentimes, and they sort of go by quickly. Good dialogue, though, because there have been a few things that have had some good dialogue, even if they weren't good quotes. Good dialogue oftentimes involves a back and forth between two or more characters, and it comes in some sort of really biting, maybe sometimes sarcastic, just really good moment. But here's the thing about, or here's what differentiates between good dialogue and a good quote. A good quote is pretty much universal in that you can say a good quote to somebody and they will immediately know either the film that you're talking about, or they'll just have heard that quote before and they will understand where it comes from. And so, they might give you a familiar smile or something like that, or they'll give you a quote back from the same movie if the movie is well written enough. Good dialogue, however, is almost always more than anything a communal experience. And the best way that I can explain that is through example. Now, hopefully, I can get this example out because last time in the previous video, it took me about 10, maybe even 15 minutes to explain this example because I kept going off on tangents. But the example that I give is from the movie The Other Guys. Now, for those of you who don't know, The Other Guys is a comedy starring Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, in which they play two cops, two detectives that have usually always been desk jockeys. Okay, so they are not the flashy cops. They sit at their desk and they don't go out and really solve crimes. They do paperwork. Well, the movie was a pretty great comedy, and it also had in it cameos by Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock. Now, spoiler alert for if you haven't seen the movie. I'm sure there are some younger viewers who haven't seen this movie. Unfortunately, it's going to get spoiled a little bit for you, but this takes place in like the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, so the rest of the movie is not spoiled for you. But The Rock and Samuel L., they play the cops that actually go out and they do the action. They're the ones running the streets, getting in the car chases, shooting the bad guys, etc., etc. So I remember back in the day, me and a friend of mine, we go see this movie together. And so, he's sitting in the movie theater, we're sitting in the movie theater, and we're just like, this is a guy's movie. We're going to sit there, we're going to have some fun, we're going to have some laughs, we're just going to enjoy the day, right? So we go to this movie, and he might not remember this because this is a long while ago, but we go to this movie, and we're excited to see Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, and we're interested to see how The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson play into the movie. So the movie starts, and there's some sort of like big chase scene with Samuel L. and The Rock, and they are, as I said, the premier cops. And so they're chasing this one bad guy through the streets. It turns from a car chase to a foot chase, and The Rock is now chasing this dude up a like through the stairwell of not a skyscraper, but like a big enough building. It's like maybe 5-10 stories, something like that. And so they finally get to the roof, and Samuel L. also is up there. He's on the roof, and the dude seems to be cornered, right? Well, instead of being cornered, the guy somehow, I think he whips out maybe like a grappling gun or something like that, and he shoots a rope down to, now wait a minute now, because I might be misremembering some stuff. He either shoots a rope down and slides down, or he has some sort of parachute. Anyway, he jumps off the building somehow, and he lands on the ground, and he keeps going and keeps running, and he pretty much escapes from them. Well, The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, they go to the edge of the building. If it was a grappling gun rope, the rope is gone, the rope's been cut, and obviously they don't have parachutes to get off the building. But instead, they look to each other, and I can't remember which one starts it, but one of them says, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" And the other one says, "Aim for the bushes." And then, in the funniest thing, just the funniest scene ever, they jump off the building. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, and my friend is thinking too, like, okay, something is probably going to happen to where, like, maybe maybe they had something down there. Maybe they somehow did have parachutes or something. But no, being the comedy that it is, it just follows them all the way down until they fall splat onto the concrete. And it's just like, oh, wait a minute. Did these fools really just jump off a building? Yes, apparently they did. Just jump off a building and kill themselves while they were chasing a perp. And then, of course, the next scene is Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. They're talking about it. And yeah, it's technically a plot hole because they're talking about how, they said these were their last words. There was nobody else up there. But they was like, yeah, there weren't even any bushes around. So what are they talking about? Aim for the bushes. Like, I guess bushes were supposed to catch their fall. I don't know. But the point that I'm trying to make there is that was great comedic dialogue. However, it's more of Dialogue oftentimes is more of you had to be their experience. It is a communal or shared experience in which, yes, for a while I could go to him, I could go to my friend, and because we shared this experience together, I could just say, "You thinking what I'm thinking," and he would then do a sort of call response thing in the same way that you would in like a church service or something like that. If some of you have ever been to church, I know there are a lot of people who are not religious these days, but he would do a call response back to me and say, "Aim for the bushes," and then we would crack up and we would laugh, and that would be a shared experience, a shared memory. That is what good dialogue can be. But again, a good quote even supersedes that, to where a good quote can be something that almost everybody that you meet can essentially identify with, even if you don't necessarily have a history with that person. The quote in and of itself transcends any sort of non-history or non-connection that you have. So good quotes through the years have always transcend. They even tend to transcend their own films oftentimes. One of the good quotes is, and I mentioned this one previously, is love means never having to say you're sorry. The reason why I mentioned it in the first time I recorded this video is because of the fact that I've only just recently seen The Love Story, the movie from where that quote comes from. I'd never seen the movie before, ever, up until like a year and a half ago. But I knew the quote and I knew where it came from. That is what a good quote can do. It can in some ways unite a bunch of people in an experience that they did not have necessarily together. And as I said, a good quote can transcend where it originally came from. The problem here is that I'm not seeing a whole lot of transcendent quotes. So here's another thing that I kind of pointed out, and this was much to the, not to the detriment, but to I guess the I'm trying to figure out the word, much to the sort of embarrassment, I guess you can say, of more slightly more pretentious filmmakers. Let's say that. I guess that's the nicer way of putting it. Much to the detriment, or much to the embarrassment of auteurs. Unfortunately, the one place that has been cranking out fairly decent, at the very least, fairly decent dialogue, not necessarily good quotes, they have a few, but at least fairly decent dialogue, is Marvel. And to a slightly greater extent, comic book movies in general, although really all of the good quotes, well, no, let me backtrack a little bit and just focus on Marvel right now. Marvel has been pumping out for the better half of the majority of their long run. This is year 16 we're going into now, since they started in 2008. For the better half of their run, they pumped out really good dialogue. One of the scenes that I know my mother, and I saw this with my mother, I saw the first Avengers with my mother. One of the scenes that she absolutely loved, and the whole crowd went wild for it, which is why it was probably sort of repeated a little bit later on in some other movies within the MCU, is that scene in which Tony is talking to Loki near the end of the film. And he's like, yeah, we might not blah, 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 but we'll dang sure avenge it. And so Loki says, yeah, I have a whole Shatari army and this and this and that. And what do you have? And Tony comes back and says, we have a Hulk. And then the Hulk busts out from seemingly nowhere, grabs Loki and just ragdolls him on the floor, back and forth, then back and forth again. That is a great piece of dialogue, because again, the reason why it's a great piece of dialogue but not really a good quote is mainly because it can't transcend its own movie. And the reason why it can't transcend its own movie is because of the fact that the character of the Hulk is in the quote. So it can't be a really great quote. And that is what a lot of the Marvel films are doing. That's why, yeah, they give us some really good dialogue, but the quotes that could become notable quotables never quite reach that realm of a love means never having to say you're sorry, or of a say hello to my little friend, or of a I'm going to give him an offer he can't refuse. Because again, it never quite gets to a point in which it transcends everything. It transcends its own movie, because the characters are oftentimes mentioned in the good dialogue. They're mentioned in the quote. Now, don't be fooled. That is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does say that you kind of have to be familiar with Marvel and with what they are doing and with the cinematic universe and things that they have built, that they've created. You have to be familiar with that in order to understand what they're talking about. So just again, think for instance, if in 15 years there are no more, well, I can never say there are going to be no more, but just in 15 years, if there is no more MCU and there are very few comic book iterations, live action iterations coming out on any of our screens, whether that's the small screen or the big screen, it might be a little bit more difficult for people within the future to understand or to identify with that quote as much, right? But again, there are people who have never seen Scarface, they've never seen Godfather, they've never seen The Love Story, they've never seen a lot of movies, but they know those particular quotes. So DC, unfortunately, and well, not unfortunately, but DC specifically, when it was ruled by Nolan in his Batman trilogy, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, and when those films were being written by him and his brother, John, they had some of the best real notable quotables around. The quote of, "You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain." Now, that might be from another film or from another book. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure on whether it is or not, because it does sound familiar, like I've read that in something else. But one of the best ones that I had seen came from The Dark Knight Rises. And you know that this is a great quote because oftentimes the quotes can start out as being incredibly serious and somehow turn to be something that you can use not only in everyday life, but you can use in a bunch of different varying situations. And a lot of times those situations can be quite comical, right? And so one of the best quotes actually came from The Dark Knight Rises. And I think you all probably know the exact quote that I'm talking about. When Bane has flown Bruce Wayne / Batman all the way, well, halfway down the world, I think, or across the world. I'm not really sure where it was now that I think about it. I feel like it was either in the Middle East or in South America. In any case, when he's flown him to the hole that he had once escaped, and he puts him in the prison down in there. And of course, Bruce has his back, it's broken, and he's going through a lot of pain and all that stuff. And Bane says, "Listen, I want you to watch what's going on in your city. I want the whole world to watch what's going on in Gotham, because this thing that we're doing is going to revolutionize everything. It's going to revolutionize the system." And he says, "Only after such and such and such and such." And yes, admittedly, in a video called Notable Quotables, I know I should know the quote by heart, but unfortunately I don't. So I'm paraphrasing here. But the very end I get. But he says, "Only after you've done such and such and such and such, only then do you have my permission to die." And that was such, even in a movie, even if you didn't particularly like the movie, that was such a fantastic quote that you saw that quote across social media for a very long time. And of course, because, as I say, it's such a great quote, it can be transformed and mutated and mutilated to fit so many other instances in regular life, like just in everyday life. One of the best ones that I saw, and I'm sure a lot of you saw it because it went viral, was a dude who, I think it was either on his truck or his car or whatever. It was incredibly filthy. I mean, the car was just, or the truck was just covered in dirt, in dust, in mud, and whatever it was caked on. And he went out, and I'm assuming with his finger, maybe with a brush or something, he drew the face of Bane with that little mask that covered, what's his face's, Tom Hardy's mouth, and made him a little bit unable to be understood. But everybody seemed to understand that quote, right? Everybody listened to, and we understood that quote quite clearly. He drew a little Bane, and then he said, "Only after you have washed the truck, only then do you have my permission to drive." It was just like, it just fits so well. It's funny. It's lighthearted. It took a serious moment in the film and it made it a lighthearted thing in real life. It applied it to real life. It didn't have to mention the name of the character that said it, nor the character that it was said to, and yet still you all got it. Everybody got it. Everybody understood it. And it was a great quote to refer back to a good movie. Now, I like the movie more than a lot of other people seem to like it. That's another time. That's story and a video for another time. But that is what a great quote can do. A great quote can transcend even its own movie, even its own characters, and become something that is essentially woven into our society in a way that allows us to connect with people across time, across space, across cultures, and feel as if we shared something even when we haven't. The unfortunate thing is that I don't see a lot of great quotes coming from scripted media. You know where I see a lot of great quotes coming from, unfortunately? I hate it, but the two places I see quotes coming from the most these days are reality TV. That's the first one, and social media. Like that's where all the quotes are coming from. That old black woman, she unfortunately died a while ago, but she used to cook like just stuff in her kitchen. And one of the things she would curse a lot, right, while she was cooking stuff in her kitchen on YouTube. One of the things that she cooked was some macaroni and cheese, and it, the video clip of her doing it went viral because she had a great quote at the end of it. She was looking, she dug into the macaroni and cheese, and she said, "Look at it, cheese all through the B, cheese all through that mother effer." It's like that's actually a great quote because you funnily enough can see that being applied to something else, like to something else, and it make it even more funny. Um, God, reality TV just it seems like almost every single season somebody says something silly, crazy, and ridiculous on whether it's one of the Real Housewives shows or one of the working class shows. Like I don't watch the Real Housewives shows anymore. I used to in my youth, but now I watch like the working shows, like Below Deck, Vanderpump Rules. When it first started, it was showing them actually working in a restaurant, etc., etc. Somebody from one of those shows is almost always going to have a good quote at least every year. Frankly, they have a good quote probably once every quarter of the year. Whether it's the classic from Atlanta, from Housewives of Atlanta, who gonna check me, boo? God, I mean, it's been so many of them. The Vanderpump Rules, Jax Taylor, when he said like, "You're not the number one guy in the group. I'm the number one guy in the group." Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll take a Pinot Grigio, also from Vanderpump Rules. These things stood out and people clamped onto them and sort of made them their own. They made them their own so much that they also became a part of American culture. We as writers, I'm a writer, we used to be able to manufacture those instances just as easily as reality was able to create those things. And somehow, some way, and for some reason, we seem to have lost that ability within the last 15 or so years. We have big movie after big movie after big movie, and none of them are quotable. And I hate it. I hate it. I hope that Dune Part 2, even though I believe that it's probably not going to be a good movie, I really do hope that it has an actual quotable line in it. Something that everybody comes out of the cinema saying. So, yeah, that's about it for right now. My camera is kind of dying, so hopefully this stuff recorded well, because I recorded like the last 15 minutes with a warning about my battery. So yeah, that's pretty much most of what I wanted to say. I might make a part 2 about this video if I get the gumption to. All right, I don't have a sign off. Hey everybody, so while I don't have an official sign off yet, I guess I should do the whole please like, comment, share, and if you so desire and you want to see more, subscribe. But more importantly, I will ask that you please go and purchase one of my books. They are mostly ebooks, and pretty much they are all under $10. See if any of my work is actually any good, if it lives up to any of the things that I'm talking about here on my channel, specifically with the entertainment industry videos. So please go purchase my books. All of my links are down below. Thank you.